Debt ceiling has been decided, at least in the House. The House votes on a narrowly passed bill to suspend the debt ceiling, or raise it at least for a year, in exchange for a very large amount of spending cuts. So we'll be talking about that. Some of the reaction to the spending bill, including the human cost of the spending bill, and what happens next. Especially given the fact that Joe Manchin is getting ready to go back on the Inflation Production Act. So we'll be talking about all of that at the top of the show. In other news, Bernie Sanders drops out of the presidential race, or at least the running of it, and decides to, instead of running, go and endorse Joe Biden. So we'll be talking about that, what's happening there, and a rather funny anecdote about Joe Biden using his cheat sheet once again for his notes. Ron DeSantis urges a ceasefire in Ukraine, much to the chagrin of one former representative, as Florida seeks ways to suspend the rules and make him allowed to run for the president. So we'll go over some of that and what's happening there. And a gleeful Tucker Carlson tells the Daily Mail his future plans, as he says he is very much enjoying his retirement. It is going to be all this and more, plus a little anecdote of something I'm thankful for at the end of the show. I was the one flying the balloons. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. What an interesting day now that we've got the debt ceiling out of the way in the House. Now, I was sure when I first started looking into this that the Democrats were going to come back and reject it in their controlled Senate, but I found a little article about Manchin while we were going through this, and I'm thinking that this is going to get interesting. I do still think this bill has a struggle to pass the Democrat-led Senate because, well, there are a lot of neocons that are in our Senate that are not as thrilled about this either. So they do hold some weight into this, and this may be dead on arrival. So we'll see. We're going to see what's happening with this. I would, honestly, if Republicans went in lockstep and Sinema and Manchin both jumped over to their side, bringing it to 51 votes, I don't think that this, because this is a budget bill, I don't think that this needs to, I don't think this can be filibustered. I would have to fact check myself on this, but I don't believe that this particular bill can be filibustered. So we'll see what happens with this and where this goes. I think this is going to get interesting. But the big side of this, of course, Biden swearing that he's going to come back and veto this, number one. And number two, we are coming up on that line, including we've got definitely some words from AOC talking about how Republicans are evil, and she knew that this was going to happen. So the debt ceiling is going to dominate the large majority of the show, so we'll be talking about all of that and more over here on Contemporary. Let's get the live chat up here so I can see what everybody's doing over here. Got us up on Rumble, which looks like we're starting to gain some following over there as well, so that's really cool. Oh no, we gotta throw some F's in the chat though too. Mogwai wants to get the debt ceiling raised. Well, I want to get some spending cuts with it. I don't have a huge problem with the debt ceiling being raised, but we need to do something to rein in the spending so we don't have to keep doing this every year. We really do. We did it so many times under the Trump admin, and then, the Biden admin just looked at this as a free pass. So we got to do something else. We got to do something different. Luke Wee has some sad news, though. Throw those F's in the chat if you see this. or in the comment section if you see this later on. Luke Wee has got some sad news today. The two girls that were killed in an ATV accident this past weekend in Afton, Minnesota. One of them was his old boss's kid. Very, very sad accident. F in the chat for that. I will lead with that F. But we do have to go on with the news today before we get started. Make sure you guys go check out great programming such as The Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, who is back on the air after his long hiatus, almost a year hiatus on The R-Rated Conservative. If you haven't checked him out, I will get a link into the Discord for his introduction video on BitChute, which already netted him a strike on YouTube. But it's just so you can see what it is that you're getting into with that one. It is definitely some coarse language, hence the R-rated part. But yeah, go and check that out. Otherwise, go check out Tweets by Brit for cultural awareness over on Twitter. Mr. Behavior for Get Video Game and video game production news over on the Twitch side. The No Gimmicks podcast for a more audio version of the news. Go check him out. And he does, by the way, if you don't follow him on Twitter, he does do listener questions that he gets off Twitter too. So you can go participate in that one. That is at No Gimmicks Pod. And much, much more. Go check out all that great programming as we bring you a better news experience from the common man for the common man. Because, hey, why get your news from people who wear suits that cost more than your house when you can get news from people who are just like you? Let's get started, shall we? Oops, wrong scene. There we go. And let's find out. Alright, starting with the Dow. The Dow took another dip today. It did start out up. The futures were up. They crashed out almost immediately, but they tried to claw their way back up again before crashing out for the end of the day, ending the day at 33,301.87 points. That is down 228.96 points, or about 0.2% on the day. So we're not seeing any wild losses, which actually I'm a little surprised by, especially with all the fight over the debt ceiling, that we're not seeing any major wild losses. I thought for sure that we'd at least be at 28 by now, given the fact that we've been talking about this since January, but we've even seen some updates for this in just mild fashion. But that's what we're going to continue to watch as we go. All three of our finance articles today are from CNBC, so we'll be talking about that. The Bitcoin took a tumble at the end of the day, still came up in the positive. Still finished out the day in the positive, but not by very much, and definitely not by where it was going. It was, actually, it looks like it crested 30,000 at one point today. The Bitcoin ending the day at 28,380.70. There's $28,380 US dollars and 70 US cents. That is up $60 US dollars and 70 cents, or about 0.25% on the day. Just a little bit shy of a quarter. In gas prices news, we have no news. Gas prices have remained steady, with 1 BP dropping down to $3.30. That's our big news for that, catching up with the Amoco that's on the Isthmus. Otherwise, we're seeing $3.50 on the west side of Madison, $3.40 on the east side. Remember, these may not reflect your particular local gas prices. Check your local listings. This is something that we can look at for a pattern as to what your gas prices are doing as they go through a trend. But yours may be higher, yours may be lower, yours may be swinging farther. You can always go check out Google Maps and go in gas prices in your local area, and that'll give you a map similar to this one to see where your best prices are in your particular city. All right, let's grab three from CNBC, all on our finance. Our live updates for the Dow. The Dow, the S&P, closed lower on Wednesday as First Republic woes eclipse big tech earnings, from Alex Haring and Tanaya Makil. DM Ryan, thank you. The Dow lost more than 200 points as investors' worries over First Republic overshadowed their excitement around big tech earnings. The blue chip index declined 228.96 points, or 0.68, to end at 33,301.87 after trading up more than 100 points earlier in the session. The S&P slid 0.38, closing at 4055.99. The tech-heavy Nasdaq added 0.47 to finish at 11,854.35, trimming gains after jumping as much as 1.43% in the trading day. Yeah, well, when your big tech names are going, that's where your NASDAQ is going to start to go up. But remember, banking is on the other two indices, so a little bit to watch, especially between the two. First Republic Bank slid nearly 30%, extending losses after falling almost 50% on Tuesday. The regional bank said late Monday that its deposits dropped 40% to $104.5 billion in the first quarter. That reignited concerns about the health of the banking system initially prompted by the closure of Silicon Valley Bank last month. Bloomberg News reported Wednesday that U.S. bank regulators were considering downgrading their assessment of First Republic, which could hinder the bank's ability to borrow from the Federal Reserve. Yeah, that's going to do well for the markets. Microsoft climbed more than 7% to trade at its highest point in more than a year after beating Wall Street's expectations. On the top and bottom lines in the latest quarter, the company also said it saw a big jump in revenue from its intelligent cloud business segment. Amazon rose more than 2% as some market participants grew hopeful that the e-commerce giant's cloud business could also show strong revenue growth. Alphabet finished down 0.1 after trading up earlier in the day. The Google parent posted better than anticipated earnings, but said revenue grew just 3% from the same period a year ago. Still, the Tech Select Sector SPDR fund added 1.5% as investors increased exposure in the thick of big tech's marquee earnings week. Meta advanced 0.9 ahead of the Facebook parent's earnings reports coming after the market closes. Amazon's quarterly report is due after the bell. So, no thought on the futures. So, we'll see what happens with this. I'm kind of interested to see what banking and tech do fighting against each other. And remember, a lot of these big tech companies are on all three indices, but they're still fighting against what the banks are doing. So we'll see what happens with this. On your layoffs report, Amazon starts layoffs in HR and cloud units. Read the memos announcing the cuts. So Amazon, big tech, is taking another major personnel loss from Annie Palmer. Amazon on Wednesday began laying off some employees in its cloud computing and human resources divisions. Amazon Web Services CEO Adam Lipsky and Human Resources Head Beth Galetti sent notes to staffers in the US, Canada, and Costa Rica, informing them of these job cuts. It's a tough day across our organization, Lipsky wrote in the memo. The layoffs are part of the previously announced job cuts that are expected to affect 9,000 employees. Last week, Amazon laid off some employees in its advertising unit, and it has let go of staffers in its video games and Twitch live streaming units in recent weeks, which is why we can't get a human being when we have a problem with Twitch. Amazon wrapped up a separate round of cuts earlier this year that affected approximately 18,000 employees. Combined with the cuts this month, it makes the largest layoff in Amazon's 29-year history. CEO Andy Jassy has been aggressively slashing costs across the company as the e-retailer reckons with an economic downturn and slowing growth in its core retail business. Amazon froze hiring in its corporate workforce, axed some experimental projects, and slowed warehouse expansion. By announcing the layoffs in ads, the AWS, Jassy has shown that two of Amazon's biggest and most profitable businesses aren't immune to the cost-cutting. Both AWS and ads have experienced slowing growth in recent months as companies trim their spending amid a challenging economic environment. Well, I guess we weren't too big to fail. And the last one. This is on our prices. I had this on the stack yesterday, but we couldn't get to it here. Nestle plans price hikes after inflation eats into profits. I don't know about that, Spartan, because I haven't been banned on Twitch yet. In fact, I'm still earning money from them. In fact, if you guys would like to go over and toss me a few cents, if you go in there and watch an ad, that's like a half a penny for me every time somebody goes in and watches over on the Twitch side. So that is, go over there and check that out, twitch.tv/JEdgar101. Even if you don't stay on the platform, if you go in there long enough to watch the ad, that still helps me. So go ahead and check that out if you could, please. The Mogwai did it, and I'm thankful for that. This coming to CNBC from Reuters. The world's biggest food group, Nestle, will raise prices further this year, Chief Executive Mark Schneider said on Thursday, after more expensive ingredients contributed to full-year net profit missing analyst expectations. That's not really the way to get your profits back up, because if you're going up another 10%, and by the way, I know what Nestle products are, and I avoid buying them because they already are the more expensive choice off of everything. I'll go generic before I'll go Nestle. He declined to comment on the planned level of price increases, which he said were necessary to offset the damage caused by commodity price rises. For consumers whose spending power has already been cut by inflation at a multi-decade high, they are likely to add concerns about strained household budgets and weakened economies. The maker of Nescafe instant coffee and Kit Kat chocolate bars raised prices by 8.2% last year, but that did not fully offset the impact of increased costs for ingredients on margins. Our gross margin is down about 260 basis points. That is massive. That's after all the pricing we have done in 2022, Schneider told reporters. Price adjustments are likely to vary depending on markets. The US and UK are seeing strong continued inflation, while it has become more muted in markets such as China and Europe, he said. In an interview with CNBC's Juliana Teitelbaum in Switzerland, Schneider said, "We're watching with interest in quite a few markets whether the inflation was largely energy and commodity-led, whether that will translate into a wage-driven inflation. Many countries negotiate their annual contracts at the beginning of the year, so that's something we watch with interest like everybody else." This has been my big tip for a lot of people for a long time. A lot of this stuff, and this is something that actually I did a while back, is try to find a way to get things as scratch as you possibly can. Because the package and the box stuff is still going to keep going up and up and up and up. I do like to use Bisquick on my cheat day when I make pancakes, but I also know that I can make them fully from scratch, both with buttermilk and without. I know how to make my own. I haven't made my own butter in a while. I should do that again. Just get a big thing of heavy cream and get a little jar and shake and make my own butter. And then I'll have plenty of buttermilk for pancakes. It's really easy. Like, you can make your own butter in a pinch. As long as you can get flour, heavy cream, possibly chocolate, and sugar, you can make just about anything in your kitchen that you get packaged. Those are your 4 staples on everything. You can make regular milk, you can make butter, buttermilk. You can make a ton of stuff just with those 4 ingredients. And sometimes it actually might be worth it to go back and check. Oh, and yeast too, but you can grow your own yeast just with the flour. I wouldn't recommend using the bleached flour for that, but you can make your own yeast. It is a little tricky and it takes a little bit of skill, but you can do it. But your Nestle stuff is going up, and that's all that I have for finance today. Let's talk about the debt ceiling. From ABC News, House GOP narrowly passes bill to raise debt limit and cut spending. The White House called it ransom, because they are in pure propaganda mode, as always. From Gabe Ferris, Lauren Peller, and Lali Ibsa. House Republicans on Wednesday narrowly passed a bill to increase the nation's debt ceiling while cutting federal government spending. And while the legislation has no prospect of becoming law, GOP leaders hope it... Oh my God. It's Disney. Of course they're going to come back and editorialize like that. But oh my God. I mean, do you have to be that blatant? Seriously? And while the legislation has no prospect of becoming law, GOP leaders hope it will help force negotiations with Democrats. The proposal, known as the Limit Save Grow Act, passed 217 to 215, with 4 Republicans joining all Democrats in voting no. Those Republicans were Andy Biggs, Ken Buck, Tim Burchett, and Matt Gaetz. Oddly enough, those were the ones I thought Green would actually get on board with that too, but that would have brought it to a dead tie. Given his party's narrow majority in the House, McCarthy could only afford 4 such defections, and agreed to a series of 11th-hour compromises this week with GOP holdouts, such as adding more stringent work requirements for certain federal programs and restoring ethanol tax credits, which the White House blasted as an unfair carve-out. If enacted, the bill would increase the debt limit by $1.5 trillion, reduce funding for federal agencies to 2022 fiscal year levels, limit growth in government spending to 1% per year, and block various measures backed by the White House, such as federal student debt cancellation and new funding for the IRS. We cannot sit back and ignore the problem like the president has. I know he does it with the border, and I know he is now doing it with the fiscal policy of America, McCarthy told reporters on Tuesday before the vote. The bill, they missed a word in there. I'm going to guess it was he said, but I mean, you can see it right there. He said the bill was to get us to the negotiating table with Democrats. Well, I guess at that point, that's probably a good thing that Biggs rejected it then. If you're not serious about the bill, don't put the damn thing forward. We want to sit down and work together, and that's exactly what this bill does, he said. Nothing that we are sitting at $31 trillion of debt. The proposed debt limit increase will last through March 2024, a shorter extension than preferred by President Brandon, in exchange for spending cuts and policy changes. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer has said the bill has no chance in the chamber, and the president has vowed to veto it. Democrats have repeatedly insisted the debt ceiling should be raised separate from any compromise on government spending and policy. Well, that's because Democrats want there to be no discussion on government spending and policy. They don't want to compromise. They want the debt ceiling raised, and then just to table the discussion about government spending again. Congress is going to need to raise the debt limit without conditions. And it's just that simple, Toke University hire said in January. She recently labeled the House bill as a ransom note.
What are people across America asking about these key
Why
issues? White House
talking?
correspondent Karen Travers joins me live now.
Shut up, you. Because the U.S. does not take in enough revenue to pay for its bills, it periodically borrows money, increasing its debt, which is capped by Congress unless lawmakers raise the limit. The U.S. hit that debt ceiling in January, and the Treasury Department has been employing extraordinary measures since then to keep the government funded, but those will run out as early as June. In remarks at a news conference on Wednesday, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell acknowledged the House GOP bill couldn't clear the Senate, but said that McCarthy and Biden must come to some compromise. We must never default, and the agreement needs to be reached between the Speaker and the President, he said. Citing past debt ceiling negotiations that involved Biden during the Obama admin, McConnell said Biden, "Dollars are something sometimes in by the government. You can't always get exactly things the way that you want them." On Wednesday afternoon, before the House voted, Biden was asked a shouted question about negotiating the debt ceiling as he left a press conference with South Korean President Yoon Suk Yeol, who is visiting Washington. Well, they haven't figured out the debt limit yet. When a reporter asked if he would meet with McCarthy, the president said yes, but he made clear once again that he views increasing the debt ceiling as, "It's not negotiable, man. I'm happy to meet with McCarthy, but not on whether or not the debt limit gets extended." Which, by the way, is, again, Biden is holding this hostage. He asked for a plan from Republicans. He got one. He's the one holding this hostage now, but, the propaganda is going to continue to tell you, oh no, it's always evil Republicans, and it's always been this way. Obama vetoed a Republican budget bill in 2010. And every news outlet said that it was Mitch McConnell. Was it Reid at the time? No, it was McConnell. Because Reid was a Democrat. Stupid. It was John Boehner and Mitch McConnell's fault. Obama could never do anything wrong. And by the way, when nothing actually happened in the government shutdown, except for a few people not getting paid but still getting full back pay after the fact, Obama went out and started putting padlocks on national parks so people could be affected by it. So that's what we have with that. From Axios, House leaders try to solve math problems on debt ceiling vote. From Andrew Solinder. Congressional leaders are scrambling to ensure their caucuses are at full force when the House votes Wednesday on House Speaker McCarthy's debt ceiling bill. Republicans have control of the House by a slim margin, and multiple Republicans are signaling plans to defect, which they did. So this is a before the fact. During the votes on Tuesday, 9 House Democrats and 6 Republicans were absent. So the math is there, and yes, as they were talking about, McCarthy did agree to a large series of last-minute negotiations to try to get this through. But he got it. By the skin of his teeth, he got it. From CNN, the propaganda begins. Republicans use the debt ceiling bill to push work requirements for millions receiving Medicaid and food stamps. From Tammy Luby. You know who was really, really big onto work requirements when we had budget and debt ceiling negotiations in the 90s? Joe Biden. House Republicans are using the debt ceiling standoff to advocate for one of their long-standing goals, requiring more low-income Americans to work in order to receive government benefits, particularly food stamps and Medicaid. They see work requirements as a twofer, allowing them to reduce government spending while bolstering the nation's labor force at a time when many businesses are still struggling to staff up. Still, the controversial policy included in Speaker McCarthy's package to increase the debt ceiling is causing some consternation within the Republican conference, the hardliners wanting to include even stricter requirements, and with moderate members in swing districts concerned that they could face blowback over the issue. If the House passes the legislation this week, as McCarthy hopes, it's certain not to advance since the White House and Senate Democrats fiercely oppose work requirements, along with other components of the bill, but it serves as a starting point for negotiations with the Biden admin over addressing the debt ceiling. House GOP lawmakers, including some who grew up in families who depended on public assistance, argue that work requirements can lift people out of poverty and end their reliance on the government. Critics, however, see the mandates as an attempt to shrink vital safety net programs without regard for the millions of people who could be left struggling to put food on the table and address their healthcare needs. And this first paragraph here is probably the most important part of this, and there's a reason that they waited until the first bullet point was over before they put this halfway down the article. Under the package, childless, able-bodied adults aged 18 to 55 could get food stamps for only 3 months out of every 3 years unless they are employed at least 20 hours a week or meet other criteria. Currently, that mandate applies to those aged 18 to 49, although it's been suspended during the Pinkopox public health emergency, which expires next month. So, nothing changes about this except for the finality age, which, again, with a lot of older adults becoming more active with advances in medicine much, much later into life, I don't see where this is a problem. My dad is 65 years old this September. So he's 64 now. And he still goes out. He still works, first off. Not as much as he did when he was still full-time employed, but because of a job shift over to Turkey, I think is where it went. Yeah, his job went over to Turkey at the very, very beginning of the Biden administration, Obama term 3. At the very beginning of that, my dad's job went over to Turkey. So he's not putting in the 50, 60, 70 hours that he was at that time. But even if he's not going out to work, he's still going out, and I chide him for doing it because at that age with a heart condition, he shouldn't be doing it alone. I don't mind that he does it. He says and he tells me it keeps him young, which I'm sure it does. But I'd at least like to have a chaperone out there when he's doing it, just in case valve number 2 decides to go. My mom is strong, but I don't think she can drag him up the hill till the ambulance gets there. But regardless of what that is, I mean, that's not something, even 40 years ago, in the 80s and into the early 90s, 30 to 40 years ago, you didn't see 65-year-olds doing that every day like that, cutting wood, doing chores around the farm or anything else like that. That it didn't happen. 65 was where your golden years started. My grandparents worked into their 70s, but it was at easier jobs. Much after retirement, I guess my grandma on my mom's side didn't have a job until after all the kids were grown up. now that I think about it. But there, she was working in a bakery in a local restaurant, handing out slices of pie and running the cash register. That was what people in their 60s did as early as as late as the early 90s. Now, you don't even think twice about seeing a 65, 67-year-old guy running maintenance in a food processing plant, or dragging hoses for pumping trucks, or cutting cords of wood a day. You don't even think twice about that. So yes, for able-bodied adults to move up from 49 to 55, I don't see an issue with that. And the work requirement, as far as I know, that doesn't even require it to be an actual 1040 job. As far as I understand, you can be doing charity work or volunteer work to get that. And the most important part, and this is the part that your Democrat operatives over on social media, the people who are pushing the propaganda, won't tell you, is the fact that this does not count if you have kids, if you are the head of household, if you are the provider for children. All this goes out the window if you've got kids. Even in McCarthy's plan. Estimates on how many people this would affect vary. In an analysis released Monday, the Congressional Budget Office said that 275,000 folks, on average, would lose benefits each month because they fail to meet the requirement and are not otherwise exempt, and another 19,000 people would receive small benefits because of the new income that they earn. Others project that reminded me of something. I've got another anecdote about that. I'm going to tell you about that in just a bit, but let me finish up this other paragraph. Others project a potentially larger impact. The provision could put about 900,000 people between the ages of 50 and 55 at risk of losing their food assistance unless they work sufficient hours and record that employment with their state agencies, receive an exemption, or live in an area where the mandate is waived, according to the left-leaning Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. I worked with a guy back during the struggle years, back when the fact that in the time when every guy's backup job was being a mechanic and the shops were empty and everybody was applying for those same 30 jobs. 700 people applying for the same 30 jobs over and over again. I was working at a union shop, unfortunately, but I was working there. We had a guy who was wrenching down with us. He sucked at it, but he was wrenching with us. And he actually went into the boss's office and asked him for a pay cut. Not a pay raise, but a pay cut, which the union absolutely would have had a heart attack over because he was losing food stamps because he was making too much money. He wanted to come in and still do the work, but he wanted to get that sweet, sweet government benefit. The debt ceiling does not go as far as some Republicans would like. South Dakota Rep. Dusty Johnson floated a bill earlier this year that would mandate recipients up to age 65 and those with children age 7 or older to work. See, I like that, but I know that that's what the opposition is going to pounce on. That legislation would have put at risk the food stamp benefits of more than 10 million people, including millions of children, the center found. I'm not opposed to that myself, I know where the propaganda is going to lead that. The debt ceiling package would also require certain adult Medicaid recipients to work, perform community service, or participate in an employment program for at least 80 hours a month, or earn a certain minimum monthly income. That's, by the way, 20 hours a week in most months. And you don't have to do that, across weeks. You can do all 80 hours in the first week and then play Madden for the rest of the month, or earn a certain minimum monthly income. It would apply to those ages 19 to 55, but not those who are pregnant, parents of dependent children, physically or mentally unfit for employment, or enrolled in education or in substance abuse programs, among others. This largely targets low-income adults who qualify under Medicaid expansion on Affordable Care Act provision. So, and this is going to be the thing that the propagandists are going to focus on, is the fact that they're trying to take benefits away from millions of people with kids. In spite of the fact that, for the most part, people with kids aren't touched by the current iteration. Let's read one from The Hill. This is an op-ed from Karen Dolan, opinion contributor. The opinions expressed in this article are the opinions of Karen Dolan and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Contemporary, Turns of Pages Productions, your host J. Edgar, or The Hill. The human cost of McCarthy's debt ceiling demands would be catastrophic. President Biden said it well when he called the House Speaker McCarthy's demands to gut the U.S. safety net or force a federal default wacko. It's not even close to what this is. Whatever words you use, McCarthy and his caucus are holding the American families, the full faith and credit of the U.S., and the global economy hostage to his demands to slash programs that many of us rely on. No, not most of us. Not most of us. You can take that most and shove it straight up your ass, Dolan. The debt limit is an arbitrary congressional cap on how much the federal government can borrow to pay for its debts. Debts Congress incurs with its own taxing and spending decisions. If Congress votes to spend more than it votes to tax, then the federal government legally must borrow to cover these bills, so if the limit isn't raised periodically, we default. McCarthy likes to compare raising the debt ceiling to parents raising their teenagers' credit limit after they maxed out a credit card. But by refusing to just raise it, what he's really advocating is running up a bill and then not paying it. He is the one behaving irresponsible. Hold on. What? The debt ceiling capped 2 weeks after McCarthy took the speakership. And by the way, after Democrats passed a massive spending package to cover the rest of the government until next October. This coming October, rather. Are you out of your mind? If anything, this is the mess that McCarthy inherited, not what he spent. These people. Make no mistake, this isn't about debt. McCarthy and Republicans in both House and Senate voted 3 times under Trump to raise the debt ceiling, which was wrong all 3 times, and even suspend it in order to rack up $8 trillion in debt, which was wrong all 3 times, including about $2 trillion for tax cuts. I'm not even going to read that propaganda line. That's a lie. That is a full-out lie. Although bipartisan spending has contributed to the national debt over the years, on partisan votes, it's actually been Republicans who voted to add more to the national debt than Democrats. President Biden, by smoke and funny numbers, claims to have reduced the national annual deficit in 2022 after he blew it out in 2021, and his 10-year budget plan for the next fiscal year would lower the national debt by $3 trillion. No, it wouldn't. How in God's name do you get that number? While more robustly funding the programs so many of us rely on. This is because, unlike the GOP plan, he includes revenues from fair taxation for the nation's wealthiest. After they go back and hide it, and it all falls on the backs of us. Yeah, this is a full-out lie. This is so much of a lie. We're going to put this in the Discord and let the people discuss it. Let's see what our friend Midget P and C all have to say. Alright. Speaking of propaganda pieces from NPR, coordinator for the American Rescue Plan weighs on Republicans' debt ceiling bill. And remember, this is from our friends over at NPR, so hit that donate button because they are only 10% funded by the government. And that 10% isn't enough, so they need our money, comrade, to make sure that they can keep telling you that it's only the Republicans that spend and spend and spend, and Democrats are clean as the driven snow. Because NPR is National Progressive Radio. They are never printing reality. They just need our money, comrade, and they need you to hit that big red donate button and make sure that they can continue to tell you that all things Republican are bad and all things Democrat are good. Let us see what Alejandro Marquez Jantz, Patrick Jaron Wattenson, and Melissa Block have to say about this.
Well, here we are in late April 2023. It has been months since the U.S. government reached its debt ceiling, the amount of money it can legally borrow to fund government programs. The Treasury is already using what it calls extraordinary measures to continue paying for Social Security, Medicare, and the military. But it estimates that will only hold until early June. And at that point, the government could default on its debt, and that could be economically disastrous.
Now, Congress can simply decide to raise the debt ceiling, which it has done 78 times since 1960. But here's the standoff. The Republican House majority says it won't do that without major spending cuts. President Biden insists that they raise the debt limit with no conditions. So how does this get solved? Well, Gene Sperling has seen debt ceiling showdowns before. He was a top economic advisor to Presidents Clinton and Obama, and now he's back in the White House as coordinator for the American Rescue Plan. Mr. Sperling, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
The reality here is Republicans control the House, and they say President Biden has to negotiate with them. So why not do that?
Well, the truth is that when somebody says negotiate on the debt limit, that is a sanitized way of saying, I'm going to make you do what I want on my budget policies, or I'm going to put the United States into default for the first time in our history. And this has been a foundation of the United States to have an immaculate full faith and credit. And so what the president is saying is, you put out your budget, we've put out ours, let's have a debate. But no side, not Democrats or Republicans, should say, I'm going to hold the full faith and credit of the United States hostage to you giving me what I want on my budget. You don't see President Biden doing that. He's not saying, do my child care proposal, or I'm going to have the U.S. economy go into default. And
Actually, that's exactly what he's doing. That is, by part and parcel, exactly what Biden's doing. Do my policies, or I'm going to let us go into default. I'm not going to negotiate. I'm not going to do anything else. Do my policies, or we're going to tank the economy. And I've got captive media to come back out and tell everybody else that it's evil. But again, that's the propaganda that comes straight from NPR. From CBS. When could the U.S. default? Economists say debt ceiling X date coming sooner than expected. I mean, we've been talking about this for probably about 2 weeks now. From Sarah Ewald Weiss. Tax season is over, revenues are down, and as the House moves to hold its first vote on legislation to address the debt limit, some new estimates put the day the federal government will run out of money to pay its bills sooner than economists initially expected. While the projections of the so-called X date have put it sometime over the summer, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said in January the U.S. would be able to avoid default through at least early June, as it uses extraordinary measures to pay its bills. At that time, the Bipartisan Policy Center estimated that date would likely arrive this summer or early fall. Economists at Bank of America expect Yellen to update her guidance on the X date by early May, and anticipate she will stick with the early June estimate. But with tax revenues down, economists at multiple banks have started moving up their own estimated timelines for the threat of a default. The April tax data thus far has come in lower than our expectations, they wrote. However, we reserve a full tax date judgment until IRS check processing slows to a trickle. Bank of America has moved up its X date projection to August 1st, but acknowledged it could slip into late July. Dude, it's like June 6th. Goldman Sachs economists have also noted a potentially shifting timeline, pointing out that tax receipts are running 35% or $138 billion below last year. But don't worry, our economy is doing fantastically. It's funny that they come out here and keep saying, oh, our tax receipts are down, and don't sit here and address why the tax receipts are down and all the layoffs that have started to come, and the loss of real wages throughout the year. At this rate, an early June deadline looks nearly as likely as the late July deadline we projected, they wrote. Their economic research team continues to put the debt limit deadline in late July, but they noted if tax receipts continue to undershoot in the coming days, the odds tilt slightly in favor of an early June deadline. The Treasury is expected to receive another round of tax payments around the mid-June estimated tax deadline, which the bank economists believe would provide sufficient funds through the end of June. I don't believe that for a second. The latest Wells Fargo report keeps the projection for the X-date as early to mid-August, calling the timeline still the most probable outcome, but their team notes a small risk that the Treasury could hit the X-date in the first half of June. So, well, I hope you've got some food stashed, because we might need it. There's a good chance of that. Alright, what else do we have? The Honorable and Venerable Alexandria Ocasio-Chavez actually agreeing with me. But in her case, with a different solution. With a very, very different solution. Let's listen to AOC pretend she knows anything about economics.
Several years ago, we warned during the Trump tax cuts that this dramatic decrease in revenue would explode the nation's debt. And we heard from the Republican side, no, let us write off our yachts.
They always go down with that. That is the stupidest argument in the world, especially given the fact, because AOC still believes that this was a tax cut for the rich. Dude, I made $40,000 the first year that the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act affected my taxes. I made $40,000 that year. And my tax burden went down $1,800. And they're going to keep doing the propaganda. Republicans just try to do something for the rich. It was always for the rich. It's never been for anything except for the rich.
Let us write off our private jets, and we said that this decrease in revenue would explode our national debt. But instead now of realizing the error of our ways and reversing these tax cuts for the
which have already reversed, by the way,
wealthy, we are now seeing the Republican side promote a bill that cuts student loan cancellation, veterans health care, cancer research, opioid treatment, Meals on Wheels, and more.
So, fundamentally, Cortez and I agree on the fact that the tax cuts without a spending cut to go with them, yes, we're absolutely going to explode the debt. The day I found out about the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, that was one of the first things that I said on Twitter was, okay, when do the spending cuts come in? Because you're going to need to do that. And instead, we turned around and got another omnibus come down the pipes, and the orange moron signed it. I was excited for the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and it did increase tax revenue, by the way, which is why our receipts are down. Well, partially because our economy is down too, but when it became cheaper to hire people and put people to work, more people were working and more people were contributing tax receipts. That's just simple economics. But yes, we absolutely should have been doing this, having this discussion about government spending. In 2018, when the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act first got approved, that is when we should have been having this conversation. Not while we're sitting here looking and saying, man, we might default right now. But we can't go back and have that conversation in 2017 anymore. So now we do have to still address it. From the Hill, a little bit of something that could make this entire argument very interesting. Especially if it does turn out that this bill doesn't need to be, or can't be filibustered. Which again, I don't know if that's the case or not. Manchin threatens Inflation Reduction Act repeal. From Rachel Frazen and Zach Budrick. The big story, Manchin escalates feud with Biden floating climate bill repeal. Senator Manchin is threatening to support a repeal of the Inflation Reduction Act, legislation he helped to craft last year amid disputes over how to implement it. A repeal of the Inflation Reduction Act, which is unlikely, at least in the near term, as it would have to make it through the Democrat-controlled Senate and pass President Biden. But the move broadly marks an escalation of tensions between Manchin and Biden. Look, if the administration doesn't honor what they said they would do and continue to liberalize what we were supposed to invest in over the next 10 years, I will do everything in my power to prevent that from happening, Manchin told Fox News host Sean Hannity on Monday. And if they don't change, then I would vote to repeal my own bill. The admin's handling of the electric vehicle tax credits has become a particular flashpoint in the feud. Manchin has lamented a delay in the imposition of battery component requirements and vehicle classifications that he believes allow too many expensive cars to qualify. Broadly in his Monday night interview, Manchin said the admin broke their word to the American public. This legislation was balanced. In the next 10 years, we're going to have enough fossil fuel to run our country. And to help our allies around the world, we will also be investing in new technology for the future. Now the Biden admin has disregarded this completely. This was about energy security, and we've not heard a word about energy security out of the mouths since it was passed. It's all about the environment. White House Press Secretary Token Diversity Hire addressed the remarks in a press briefing, saying the admin was faithfully implementing the law. No, they're not. And anybody with 3/4 of a brain could have told Joe Manchin that this was going to happen. They were going to get a signature on it, and they weren't going to give him anything back just because they needed him to be in lockstep as a good, faithful Democrat. And then they turned around and stuck it to him. Because that's what Democrats do. A little bit more on this from The Blaze. Senator Manchin shares his buyer's remorse for becoming the deciding vote on Inflation Reduction Act. From Chris Enlow. Joe Manchin is expressing buyer's remorse for helping President Brandon pass the so-called Inflation Reduction Act. In an interview with Fox News host Sean Hannity on Monday, Manchin said the law, which does not actually reduce inflation, is being used to advance the Biden admin's climate agenda. Yeah, everybody told you that when you signed on to the thing. This is not news, by the way. According to Manchin, one of the central goals of the law was to ensure energy security, but the Biden admin has completely ignored the agreement that was made with Manchin. Yeah, we know. Let's listen.
All right, now we turn to the great state in West Virginia. Now, its sole Democratic Senator, Joe Manchin, remember, he was pivotal in passing Biden's $2 trillion America Rescue Plan, as well as the $1 trillion Inflation Reduction Act. Now, to do this, they agreed, that means Schumer, and that means Joe Biden had to agree with a deal with Joe Manchin, and he was promised many energy projects for his state of West Virginia. By the way, it's still the lifeblood of his state's economy, and it's a lifeblood of the world's economy. But both a key pipeline and other incentives involving batteries, they all upended have been upended at the federal level. In other words, Joe went along with the climate alarmist cult, and they broke their promise to Joe Manchin. And now appears Joe Manchin was lied to. He is now blasting what he calls Joe Biden's deficiency of leadership. He is accusing his own party of abusing their power, and he's here to talk about it. West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin. Senator, welcome to the program.
Good to be with you, Sean.
No, Senator, we don't agree on every issue. But I really believe on the one issue that we do agree on passionately, especially for the people. You have wonderful people in your state. I've been there a number of times.
Absolutely.
And this energy issue is the lifeblood of the world's economy. You made a deal with Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden. Did they break their word to you?
Well, basically, they broke their word to the American public. And what had happened is I had an opportunity to write a piece of legislation. The total cost of the bill was $687 billion over 10 years. That's how much money would be basically appropriated for this bill was raised. And $384 billion went directly to energy. I had a chance to write the energy portion would give us energy security. The Ukraine war breaks out, Sean. Putin weaponizes energy. We can't help our allies. We see what's happening. We're not even energy independent ourselves. You cannot remain and be the superpower of the world unless you have energy independence and energy security. We have the gas, we have the oil, we have the coal. We can do it better and cleaner than anywhere in the world. And so this piece of legislation was balanced. 10 years that we're going to have enough fossil to run our country and to help our allies around the world. And we also be investing in the new technology for the future. Now, they've disregarded that completely, what was agreed upon, and they know exactly what we agreed upon. This was energy security, and you have not heard the word energy security out of their mouth since it was passed. It's all about environment.
You know, I look at this, Senator, and it really scares me because we were energy independent. Now we're energy dependent once again. That is hurting not only your state, your economy. Think of all the benefits of being energy independent. It's good for national security. We don't need to count on.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason that I don't like listening to Hannity, too. Number one, yeah, Mogwai points out that he would have reached a lot more viewers on Tucker, but we'll be talking about Tucker a little bit later. But yeah, Hannity just leads. Hannity doesn't interview you so much as he tells you right on air what to say. I think Hannity should have been the one that was canned, not Tucker. Just for that aspect. But yeah, everybody and their brother told Joe Manchin that Biden was going to back out on his deal. And you know what? He signed on to it anyway. I do have a hard time feeling sorry for him over that. Let's talk presidential politics. Starting with the Associated Press. Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders endorses Biden, rules out 2024 bid of his own. Which is a crying shame because I kind of wanted to watch that. I wanted to watch Waldorf and Statler go at each other one more time. From Steve Peoples. Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont said Tuesday that he would forego another presidential bid of his own and instead endorse President Brandon's re-election. The leading progressive, who was Biden's chief rival in the 2020 presidential primary, told the Associated Press that he would I would do everything I can to see that this president is re-elected. The last thing this country needs is a Donald Trump or some other right-wing demagogue who's going to try to undermine the American democracy or take away a woman's right to choose. And they should choose socialism. It's a good thing. Red lines are a good thing. Or not address the crisis of gun violence. You know, after the glorious revolution, we can go back and take all the guns because, you know, all the revolutionaries, well, they won't need the guns anymore because the glorious communism will be in power. Or racism, or sexism, or homophobia. So I'm in to do what I can to make sure that this president is re-elected. He got paid off. He did. But this goes right along with the same thing that we were seeing in yesterday's video when we watched that, the Biden announcement video. The key point of the Biden campaign is, hey, come on, I'm here to stand in the way of those evil MAGA, because those evil MAGA want to get to you, man, and they want to abuse you, and I'm going to stand in their way. And Bernie is right on. He got that script. I know he did. Because nothing the Biden admin is doing, he believes in. Now, Biden is being much more progressive than most people thought that he was going to be, and that comes from some of his handlers, but he is in no way in Bernie territory either. In absolutely zero way in Bernie territory as far as progressivism goes. But the talking point is hey, look at me, man! I'm the only person that can stand in the way of them evil MAGA. Me, the great uniter in chief of this country, man. And again, the main shame is that I really wanted to see Waldorf and Statler go after each other one more time. From the New York Post. Biden cheat sheet shows that he had advanced knowledge of journalist questions. Again. Let's watch the video on this and then we'll read the article.
My desire to increase
There's his note card.
manufacturing and jobs in America is not about China. I'm not concerned about China. Remember, America invented the semiconductor. We invented it. We used to have 40% of the market. And we decided that what we're going to do over the past, I don't know how many decades.
Is he also getting his notes in his ear? Like, I've watched a lot of presidential speeches, and I have never seen the earbuds. I mean, you can see the cord clearly on this side, and you can see the butt in this one. Are they telling him what to say through an earpiece?
We decided that it was going to be cheaper to export jobs and import product. And along came the pandemic. And the pandemic taught us that we used to have, as I said, 40% of the market just some years ago. Now it's down to 10%.
All right, and in the article, a cheat sheet held by President Brandon during a Wednesday press conference revealed that the 80-year-old commander-in-chief had advanced knowledge of a question from a journalist. No, he had advanced knowledge of all the questions from the journalists. And again, this is not the first time he's been caught with this. How are you squaring your domestic priorities like reshoring semiconductor manufacturing with alliance-based foreign policy? Read a question from LA Times reporter Courtney Subramanian. The revelation came during a joint press conference with South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol that discussed growing nuclear threats from North Korea as the nations celebrate the 70th anniversary of their alliance. Another cheat sheet showed the names of other Biden admin officials to relay the order remarks would be delivered at the press conference. 80 million votes, folks. Spartan says they have to talk into his ears because he reads the incorrect parts on the teleprompter. Repeat the line! It's not the first time Biden's crib notes have been outed by speedy photojournalists, which fueled Republican speculation about his mental acuity, of which he has none. Ha! Oh my god, they even have how to pronounce the name. His physician reported the president was in good health in February, but refused to field questions from reporters about his cognitive strength. Look at that. It's got a pronunciation guide on her name. And her face, in case he doesn't recognize her as being the first one to talk. Subramanian. What a joke this admin is, my god. screwed, aren't we? We're really screwed, aren't we? Last June, the president exposed a comically worded cheat sheet with detailed instructions. You enter the Roosevelt room and say hello to participants, the note read, then immediately directed the oldest ever president. You take your seat. In July of 2021, the president accepted an embarrassing note from an aide, which was also snapped by a photographer that said, "Sir, there's something on your chin." I forgot about that one. Biden has reportedly bristled at aides disrupting his approach to messaging, even when it puts him at odds with the admin policy. In March, the president unexpectedly called for Vladimir Putin to be removed from power following the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Comments the White House officials later had to panically walk back. I want to look at that again, even muted. Yeah, he's wearing an earpiece. Or 2 earpieces, I should say. $80 million votes. On the other side of the aisle, the Trump campaign is up on TV with a 60-second spot, so this is the first ad spending of the 2024 cycle from Team Trump. I have not pre-watched this, so this is 60 seconds I'm watching for the first time, probably with you.
Ron DeSantis was struggling big time in his primary race for governor of Florida. Polls revealed DeSantis was failing so bad, he was losing by a staggering 17 points. Then, DeSantis was saved by the endorsement of President Trump. Trump's support was so powerful, just 2 days after the endorsement, DeSantis took a commanding lead, and it propelled him to being elected governor.
I'd like to thank our president for standing by me when it wasn't necessarily the smart thing to do.
You're welcome, Ron. Unfortunately, instead of being grateful, DeSantis is now attacking the very man who saved his career. Isn't it time DeSantis remembers how he got to where he is?
Make America great again. Build the wall. Then Mr. Trump said, "You're fired." I love that part.
Truth is, there's only one person who can make America great again.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and
You know what's funny is I just looked over at my notifications on Twitter while we were watching this video and found that I was just called a dictatorship-loving MAGA. Just a breath before I'm about to rip into the former president. This is not it, dude. I understand you want to be president again. I understand that you, and I want to see what you would actually do without having to worry about re-election. I don't want to vote for another spending bill like what you did the first time in office, but it's markedly against my curiosity of what you can do without having to worry about trying to make nice and make pretty for re-election. But you're attacking Ron DeSantis from the left. You are not a kingmaker as much as you want to be. This ain't it. Settle down. He's not even announced, number one. This is not even, we don't know that this is your political rival. And instead of putting focus on people who have actually announced, Nikki Haley, Asa Hutchinson, who else? Who else has actually announced? Vivek Ramaswamy? Larry Elder? You spent the first campaign financing of your campaign ripping into Ron DeSantis. You moron. Robert Reich urges secretaries of state to refuse to put Trump's name on 2024 ballots, living up to his last name of Reich. Maybe he wants to be the leader of the Third Reich. This is also, by the way, not how you do political operations in this country, in a free country. You let everybody go back and run, and then let the people decide who they want to be on the ballot or not. You don't use the government interference to go back and do that. That's what dictatorships do. From Lawrence Forza. Robert Reich, Labor Secretary under former President Clinton, urged secretaries of state to refuse to put former President Trump's name on the 2024 ballot, saying Trump committed treason. That might actually be something where we've got to go back and have a conversation with the Secret Service, because the penalty for treason is death. So that's Robert Reich calling for death for the former president. In an op-ed published by The Guardian, Reich argued Trump violated the Constitution by participating in a selfie fest against the country, referencing the January 6, 2021 attack on the Capitol. He wrote that Trump's reported attempts to pressure the state officials to change their tallies, to persuade former Vice President Pence not to certify the election results, and his calls for supporters to march on the Capitol were all examples of treason. "This, my friends, is treason," he said. But Trump is running for re-election despite the explicit language of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, which prohibits anyone who has held public office who is engaged in selfie fest against the United States from ever having served in public office again. Reich continued, well, again, you're going to have to get around that pesky Fifth Amendment. Because nobody shall be deprived of life, liberty, or the pursuit of happiness. Yes, that includes pursuit of public office. Without due process of law, you can't even bring an indictment, much less try him in front of a jury of his peers. Reich argued that the former president tried to change the results of the election in 2020 and questioned what would stop Trump from attempting the same moves in 2024. He said that the chances of him trying to overturn the election are greater now than before because Trump has more supporters in local and state government. He said that while the recently passed Electoral Count Reform Act, which is an update to the Electoral Count Act of 1887, covers some legal concerns, Trump may still find a way to influence the results of the election. He said that it's up to the secretaries of state to determine whether Trump should be on the ballot. Secretaries of state, who in most cases are in charge of deciding who gets on the ballot, must refuse to place Donald Trump's name on the 2024 ballot based on a clear meaning in Section 3 of the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Again, completely ignoring the 5th Amendment to the Constitution. Trump spokesperson Steve Chung said in a statement to The Hill that it is sad that some individuals want to keep people from voting for the former president. And again, these people like Reich, and people like Kosciarella, and people like Jersey My Wife's Son Reliant, keep telling us that Trump is unelectable, that the voters are going to reject him. Well, if you let him get on the ballot, you can prove that. The problem is they don't believe he's unelectable. And they're very open about it. Because they want to do anything they can to keep him from getting anywhere close to being elected. And readers added context of this one. Community notes, good old community notes on Twitter. Greg Price says, diversity hire. Republicans are fighting to put fentanyl on the street. Defunding Border Patrol, the only thing House Republicans are committed to giving Americans is increased crime, which we already have, lower economic growth, which we already have, and more manufacturing jobs sent back to China, which is coming. Let's listen.
Millions. It's clear that the Speaker's bill breaks House Republicans' commitment to America. In the run-up to the 2022 election, House Republicans promised to put cops on the beat. Instead, they're fighting to put fentanyl on the street by defunding Border Patrol. Their proposal makes clear that only things House Republicans are committed to giving to Americans are increased crime, lower economic growth, and more manufacturing jobs sent back to China. The Speaker's position is that unless the President and the Senate agree to that job-killing, cost-increasing, anti-farm, anti-healthcare, anti-education agenda, they're going to millions.
That's not what I wanted to do. Anyway. I hit the wrong button. Anyway, readers added context that people might want to know. Republicans of the House Homeland Security Committee introduced legislation designed to beef up border security. The Border Reinforcement Act of 2023 calls for resumption of border wall construction, hiring 22,000 Border Patrol agents supporting local law enforcement, etc. With a link to the bill. It's introduced, but it hasn't been given a number yet. It's 68 pages, which means it's way longer than it needs to be, but I'm sure a lot of this also has to do with how they're going to appropriate the money to do so. But no, they in no means are trying to cut border security. That would be the Biden admin. I got this one here while we're talking about presidential politics and somebody who hasn't declared yet. DeSantis urges ceasefire in Ukraine, from Julia Mueller. Ron DeSantis urged Russia and Ukraine to reach a ceasefire, making the comments during a visit to Japan on a multi-stop international tour. You don't want to end up in a battle of Verdun situation where you just have mass casualties, mass expense, and end up in a stalemate, DeSantis said in a Tokyo interview with outlet Nikkei Asia, making reference to the major World War I battle. It's in everybody's interest to try to get to a place where we can have a ceasefire, DeSantis said. Russia's war on Ukraine passed its one-year mark earlier this year, and Kiev is reportedly prepping for a possible spring counteroffensive. DeSantis stopped in Tokyo and spoke with Prime Minister Fumio Kishida as part of a four-country tour to Japan, South Korea, Israel, and the UK to build an economic relationship with Florida has with each country. The Florida governor sidestepped a question in Japan on Monday about the 2024 presidential election polling and hasn't formally announced whether he'll run for office, but the international trip adds to speculation that DeSantis is upping his international profile ahead of a possible presidential bid. And yes, it's important to come to a point where we can stop doing this. And by the way, stopping the flow of money into this and the propaganda that the only way that this ends is when Kiev goes back and takes over Moscow, which I have heard people say, by the way. They're far, far fringers, but I've heard people say that this only ends when Kiev comes back and takes over Moscow. But instead of coming back and doing that and urging that that we don't go to a compromise at all. That seems to be the big problem with the Democrat policy, is that it's no compromise. I have made my points exhaustively on the situation in Ukraine, reminding people that while it would be easy for Russia to stage troops in Belarus and completely surround Kiev in a day's campaign, they don't seem interested in the country at all outside of two regions in the southeast where people who don't want to be a part of Kiev anymore live. And again, my big thing with this is it's always sounded to me, just watching the strategy, looking at what is happening, looking at the way that Russia conducts its troops, and the fact that the only attack that seems to be reported on Kiev is missile strikes in order to soften up Ukrainian forces, I don't think they're interested in taking over the Ukraine. I've never thought that. It's always seemed more, and again, this comes from playing war games, it's always seemed more like Russia is interested in liberating the Donbass, either taking it over because most of their people are ethnically Russian, or at least giving it its independence and helping along with its independence from Kiev. But what do I know? I don't have propaganda spewed to me 24/7, 365. And the only reason that I brought this up and left this tweet up here is because our favorite Republican turned Democrat, Adam Kinzinger, quote tweeted the tweet that announced this article from The Hill and said, "Idiot." Warmonger that he is. Speaking of DeSantis, from WESH2, Florida may be reworking laws to allow DeSantis to run for president while maintaining position as governor. From Greg Fox. Yes, from what I understand, and I don't know this to be completely true. I don't watch CNN. I don't watch any cable news, dude. I don't have cable. Okay, anyway, what I was going with that is, from what I understand, Florida has a law where you can't seek another public office while you are currently sitting as a political official, which means in order to run for the presidency, Ron DeSantis would actually have to fully resign his duties as the governor of Florida, which I know the people of Florida don't want. This is from Greg Fox. DeSantis seems to have his next run for office in mind as Republican Senate leadership filed a bill Thursday to revise laws relating to elections. GOP leadership will likely be attempting to rewrite the law, as they did for former governors Scott and Christ, to allow them to run for federal office while maintaining the flexibility to be governor. Currently, FS Chapter 99 reads, any officer who qualifies for federal public office must resign from the office he or she presently holds. If the terms of, or any part thereof, run concurrently with each other, the resignation is irrevocable, which means he can't lose the primary and then just go back and take his office back up. He would have to wait until the next election cycle, which I believe he would win in a landslide. Since the next presidential term would begin in January 2025, in the middle of DeSantis' second term as governor, lawmakers will certainly make adjustments to allow him to stay governor as long as needed. They will likely change it back after the next White House race is settled, just in case a Democrat wins the next governor's race, because we have to have that propaganda in here. The first committee on the hearing on this election law change comes on April 4th. I honestly don't like it. Well, I don't like the idea of DeSantis running for president to begin with. I don't care for Ron DeSantis. I never have, and I never will. But regardless, that was one big pet peeve that I had with Scott Walker. Well, I had a lot of pet peeves with Scott Walker. He did a lot of good as governor, but he did a lot of stupid stuff too. But that was one of my big problems is, Mary Burke had the perfect attack line, and she still couldn't win against him. And that is the fact that a lot of people knew that he had presidential ambitions at the time. Because he had presidential ambitions at the time. And just like in Florida, we don't have such a law in Wisconsin, but just like in Florida, the end of his term would have run after he would have been seated as president. Had he won, thank God that he didn't. So he was coming to be elected to stay for 2 years and then pass the torch down to neocon Rebecca Clayfish, which would have destroyed the state. Honestly, I don't like that they're planning to change this law, and in fact, I really think that a politician, if that politician is going to run for public office, should commit to the end of term. The people voted for him, they wanted him for the full term. You're kind of cheating them when you come in and say, just kidding, I don't care about your state, I just have higher political ambitions. And the people of Florida really, really seem to like Ron DeSantis. And I won't begrudge them of that. For my issue with DeSantis, as I've always said, doesn't necessarily come from his agenda. It's the way that he implemented it before he got his ass called on it. There's a reason when I make fun of him on Twitter, I call him Governor Executive Order, Governor EO. Because he was in that position where he was just going EO, 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 EO. Like a bad rendition of Old MacDonald. Until he got called on it, and then he started urging the legislature to push it through, which, I mean, is a little better, but I relate to a lot of what it is that Ron DeSantis tried to do. I do want to point out to Ron DeSantis stands was that he was not good on the lockdowns. And I will use another personal anecdote as a reminder of that. So in 2020, now mind you, he was one of the ones that opened up first, but he was full speed ahead lockdown in the midst of the pinko pox pandemic, just like everybody else was. In fact, he might have been a little bit harsher on it. I was reminded. As I was getting ready, I picked up one Stephen R. Ignoramus III and loaded him up in the passenger seat of my pickup in DC one day, and we headed 95, down 95, headed for Orlando to go visit John from the Porch Boys, formerly the Generational Gap. And Robert of the Generational Gap, who was still the co-host at the time, called me personally to remind me, hey, you guys, you might want to try to find a back road or something to come in, because at the way station coming in, they're stopping everybody, funneling everybody through and making them take the COVID test, which they were at the time in the process of dismantling when we went down. They were actually taking it all apart when we drove by on the way down. So they had just stopped that like the week before we went down there. But he was a hardliner on lockdowns too. Don't let him bullshit you. Don't let Ben Shapiro bullshit you either. I listened to Shapiro. I hate listening to Shapiro today. And his glowing praise for Ron DeSantis. And he's trying to tell people that, no, Ron DeSantis... Okay, gang, no, Ron DeSantis, he never did lockdowns. He kept the state open. He was the shining beacon of freedom in the rest of the country. No, he wasn't. He absolutely wasn't. So we'll see what happens with that. Let's talk about Tucker. I'm going to spend a brief amount of time on this Politico article from Politico's magazine. Don't believe everything you read about Tucker Carlson. The reports are littered with fuzzy sourcing. Okay, Politico, and people reading Politico, take that line, take that headline right there, and apply it to absolutely everything societal and political. The war in Ukraine, the debt ceiling, the pinko pox pandemic, the economy. Don't believe everything you read about that. In fact, again, as I've always said, and part of the reason I use so many left-wing outlets off of this, is you should look at right-leaning outlets and left-leaning outlets and see what it is that's competing, which reporting is opposite from each other, and the things that they have in common are likely as close to the truth as you're going to get from the mainstream media. And I won't even say that that's truth. But the lies that they have in common are probably the closest to the truth you're going to get. That's all I have to say about this one. But now we have some wild whoppers, definitely. Rolling Stone, the penultimate leftist rag that used to actually be about music. Rolling Stone, Fox has a secret oppo file to keep Tucker Carlson in check, sources say. From Diana Falzone, Asawin Subsing. Aw, this is an... Wait, I thought I archived this one. I guess I didn't. Hold on, I want to see if this one's pre-archived. It was. Haha, I got around your app or your paywall. Ha 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 ha. Fox News executives have in their possession a dossier of alleged dirt on Tucker Carlson should he attack the network in the wake of his departure. Yeah, I'm sure they do. Well, they've got dirt on everybody. Big billion-dollar corporation has dirt on person detracting from them. That's not a headline. That's the name of the damn newspaper. When Fox announced Carlson's departure on Monday, the network presented a separation as amiable. But according to one former on-air Fox personality, the anchor and some of the channel's top execs are parting ways in the worst possible and messiest possible terms indeed. In private communications released last month as part of the Dominion Fox lawsuit, the now-fired Fox host gossiped that one such exec hates us, claiming that she was covertly working against him and other hosts. But if Carlson attempts to torch the network, he's leaving. Fox is prepared, sources say. Yeah. I'm sure. This one seems just a little bit too far-fetched for me. Another one here, possible speculation as to what got him. From the Blaze, Tucker ousted at Fox over speech stressing the importance of prayer and the evil nature of pop-up ads in the middle of an article. And the evil nature of the forces besetting America, claims insider. Unnamed, but insider. That's the important part of this, by the way, the unnamed part of this. From Joe McKinnon. Tucker Carlson may have been given the boot at Fox over his emphasis on the importance of prayer and a suggestion that America is not presently afflicted by bad politics, but rather by the forces of evil. Tell me more, tell me more. Like, did he have a car? Carlson gave a keynote speech Friday at the Heritage Foundation's 50th anniversary gala in Maryland, wherein he stressed that the old political binary fails to account for the division presently afflicting America. Instead, it can be better understood in theological or spiritual terms as the battle of good versus evil, suggests the 53-year-old. An unnamed source reportedly briefed on Fox Corporation CEO Rupert Murdoch's decision-making told Vanity Fair that Carlson was ousted largely over the speech on account of its religious overtones. That stuff freaks Rupert out, said the insider. He doesn't like all the spiritual talk. Well, you're running the wrong network if you don't like spiritual talk. Because 95% of your viewers are religious fanatics, number one. And it's not just one religion, by the way. 95% of your viewers fall into that category, and I would say a good 80% of your personalities fall into that category as well. Like, you legitimately have a contributor who has gone off and formed his own network, but still contributes to your network, who wears a funny tiny hat, expressing how deeply pious and religious he is. If this is actually a problem that Murdoch has, he is running the wrong network. I don't buy it. And of course, it's always unnamed source. Scruffy the janitor coming out and telling us how Murdoch runs his network. From the Daily Mail. Exclusive appetizers plus entree. Looks like Tucker Carlson doesn't give two fucks. Oh, I see what you did there. About his ouster from the network, gleefully telling Daily Mail his future plans while tooling off to a romantic date with wife Susan. From Ben Ashford's in Boca Grande, Florida for DailyMail.com. It's been barely 2 days since his brutal ouster from Fox News, but Tucker Carlson looks like a man without a care in the world. The TV firebrand shrugged off the media storm and insisted he was more interested in enjoying a romantic date with his wife, as he broke his silence in an exclusive chat with DailyMail.com. Retirement is going great so far, chuckled Carlson, 53, as he emerged from his $5.5 million beach home in Boca Grande, on Tuesday night. I haven't eaten dinner with my wife on a weeknight in 7 years. Pressed on his future, the flame-throwing former host of Tucker Carlson Tonight flashed a broad smile and joked, appetizers plus entree. Hey, maybe you'll have a sausage and pineapple pizza. Dad of 4 Carlson zoomed off in a golf cart without elaborating on the reports that he was blindsided by Monday's shock announcement that he was parting ways with Fox despite being the network's biggest primetime star. Yeah, again, probably not their best decision. But Daily Mail understands that he spent Tuesday huddling with right-hand man Justin Wells, who lost his executive producer gig, as the cable news veterans plotted their next move. Former Fox host Glenn Beck and Jeremy Boring, founder of The Daily Wire, have both said they'd love to offer Carlson a job, who courted controversy by arguing against the U.S. involvement in the Russia-Ukraine conflict and rejected the notion that January 6th was you get it. My question there is, can Jeremy afford him? Tim Pool said the same thing. I hate listening to Tim Pool last night. And he said the same thing. Look, I would love to come out here and give Tucker a job. I wrote a letter to him right away and begged him to come in, but I know that I can't afford him. Another one where don't necessarily believe everything you read about this. Good riddance. Pentagon officials reportedly pleased about Tucker Carlson Fox News split. From Alex Nitzberg. Oh, we're running up on the clock, aren't we? Good God. I think we'll finish the Tucker stuff and we'll have to call it a night. I didn't realize that we're already at 10 to 8. From Alex Nitzberg. Fox News Media announced Monday that the network and Tucker had agreed to part ways. There are 2 Defense Department officials who are pleased by the split. Without divulging their identities, which means, again, more unnamed sources, the outlet quoted 2 Defense Department officials. We're a better country without him bagging on our military every night in front of hundreds of thousands of people, a senior Defense Department official said, according to Politico. That person also claimed that Carlson's repeatedly cherry-picked department policies and used them to destroy the DoD as an institution, according to the outlet. Good riddance, another Defense Department official reportedly said. Because that screams First Amendment, using the government and government opinion to shut down free speech. NPC News, which I also didn't go through the dance of Well, turn off your ad blocker. I'm really a professional around here, I promise. Come on, you. There you go. This is the dumb fuck one. Far right laments Tucker Carlson's ouster and loss of its shot at the mainstream. One of these times I want to ask some of these outlets, like NBC News, how does it feel to know that you've gone from being an actual news network to propaganda like you are? From Brandy Zadrozny and Ben Collins. Fox News' dismissal of top-rated host Tucker Carlson sent a shockwave through mainstream and conservative media this week, but nowhere was Carlson's loss felt more than on the fringe and the right-wing websites and forums where so many of his narratives originated. Jesus Christ. Okay, I know far-righters, and they hate Tucker just the same because he doesn't go far enough. And they think he's a controlled oppo. Tell me you've never met a far-right individual in your life without telling me you've never met a far-right individual in your life. These are the people who think that apolitical me is a far-righter. On web shows and message boards, creators of hate and conspiracy theory bemoan the loss of Carlson and their path to a mainstream audience. He amplified my reporting more than anyone else, Darren Beatty, a blogger and purveyor of conspiracy theories related to the January 6th Selfie Fest, said on Monday on a web show hosted by TPUSA President Charlie Kirk, who is also not far right, by the way. Neocon Charlie Kirk. He was basically the only person on Fox who would dare to have me on, and not the only case, Beatty said. There are other people, and nobody would dare let them on any other Fox show, but Tucker would have them on to say things that you won't hear anywhere on American TV. Carlson's relationship to fringe figures on the far right was in some ways symbiotic. He would use his platform to attack institutions and people, unleashing a troll army drawn from the very ranks of fringe right-wingers. Oh my god. Dude, Brandy, take the tinfoil off. Holy crap. This is so conspiracy-minded. You make Alex Jones look sane. Something the authors of this article have experienced on several occasions. Oh my god. Steve Bannon, a former top Trump aide who appeared Tuesday on Kirk's show, said the power of Tucker was his ability to distill and package fringe political ideas to a new audience. Bannon and Rupert and Lachlan Murdoch, the father and son who oversee Fox News' parent company, fired Carlson to keep those ideas from seeping into a more mainstream audience. My god. Is there an op-ed on the top of this? No. No, this is just regular reporting. I can't believe what the media's come to. And I read this crap every day. And we will do one more. Then I will share something that I am thankful for. And we will head out of here for the day. How Tucker Carlson's exit could financially impact Fox Corporation, according to experts. From Max Zahn. The seismic exit of Fox News host Tucker Carlson this week elicited a reaction from politicians as varied as former President Trump and Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Chavez. But the move also sent shockwaves across Wall Street. Shares of Fox News parent company, Fox Corporation, on Monday tumbled more than 3%, which amounts to hundreds of millions of dollars in value. That would be $800 million in value, by the way. Nielsen data on Tuesday showed that roughly 20% drop in audience for the first show, featuring a temporary replacement host, Brian Kilmeade, according to The Hollywood Reporter. I guess it wasn't Jesse Waters. The departure of Carlson, the nation's most watched primetime cable news host, could cause significant financial damage for Fox through diminished stock value, weakened income from cable carriers, and lower advertising revenue, some analysts told ABC. Again, this is one of those, everybody tried to tell you this when we found out about it. This is not news. It has the potential to be massive, Matthew Tuttle, the CEO and CIO of Tuttle Capital Management, who closely follows the media industry, told ABC News. There's going to be a very large impact from this. I don't think you can dress it up as positive. However, some media industry analysts downplay the potential damage since the company has overcome previous departures of high-profile hosts, and the move offers an opportunity for the 8 p.m. show to draw corporate advertisers alienated by Carlson's controversial program, experts say. Yeah, but if you have no eyes on those advertisements, what good is the advertisement? The advertisers buy your ad spots with the idea that 3 million people are going to be having their eyes on that ad spot. If you can pull only a 20,000 person audience like CNN, what good is that odds? Well, still, that's a lot of people for an ad spot, but I mean, you're not getting the 3 million people's eyes on that spot. And by the way, it's not just fringe fry-right morons, too. I've argued a long time that the vast, vast majority of Tucker's audience, when he was in the primetime slot, came from bar leftoids looking for something that they can post, clip out of context, and post on Twitter and say, "This is all of MAGA. This is every Republican." And honestly, I think he baited some of them for that too. I really do. Like I said, I never liked Tucker. I don't trust him. I don't like him. Brian Kilmeade has the hosting power as a mushroom. Yeah. Fox sucks. Fox has sucked for a long time. And while a lot of people did like Tucker, and a lot of people hate watch Tucker, it wasn't enough to pull that network out of its void of suckitude. And with that, our news is done. And we are going to finish off with something I'm thankful for. I'm going to do a twofer on something I'm thankful for this week. Because one kind of involves a little bit into my personal life. Not very much into my personal life, because I don't talk about myself very often. And then one, a little bit of channel stuff as well. So, one thing that I know is that Rumble does count every single view. Every time somebody clicks on and it clicks right back off the channel as a view. But even still, something that I'm getting on Rumble that I didn't get on YouTube was outreach. Rumble's actually putting me up on their front page. And people are clicking in. Some people are starting to follow. We're starting to actually get some people in. Some people who are new. So we don't have a lot of commentary that's going on yet, and I do hope to change that. And again, I do look at the commentary. Not like in the morning show. In the morning show, I did not look at the commentary at all. I looked at it in case there was a fight that broke out in there. But for the most part, I kind of just went on to my ramble because, as of right now, if I decided to go back and take these last 4 articles that I have up on the screen, that you can't see anymore, but if I decided to go back and do that, I could. I have nowhere else to be for the rest of the night. Whereas in the morning show, I did have to hurry up, finish up, because if I did not finish off Contemporary by 9:20, I was going to be late for work the next day, or for that day. So basically all I have to do is jump up, go over, take a shower, and make some dinner. Some nice low-carb meatloaf. And a salad, by the way. Yum yum. But I'm starting to see some growth. I wish that I would have done this a long time ago. Part of it is because I had, number one, I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't figure out why I couldn't get my live streams to show up. Thank you to the R-rated conservative for pointing that out to me and saying that yes, they actually change. And this is a pro tip for anybody who decides that they want to stream or anything and go onto Rumble as well. Every time, and I wish somebody would have told me this months ago, but every single time you start up a live stream on Rumble, they change your RTMP address and your stream key. You get a new one for every stream. And it's just a matter of going, you don't even have to make a new channel in Restream if you're using Restream. For StreamYard, I don't know, because I don't know how that one works. I'm debating using StreamYard just to see what they have for better opportunity, but with Restream, all you do is you change over you change the credentials. You go and you edit your settings. You change your credentials, the RTMP, because it changes a slot. It assigns you a different slot every time, I've noticed. The end of the address says slot 8, slot 32, slot 22, and it's random. But that's what they changed in there. They changed the address, they changed the stream key. But once you figure it out, I mean, there's potential for growth, even if you were late into the game, like I was for Rumble. There's a lot of potential for growth for that. And I do hope more people get involved in that, not just in the political side either, but that's, again, tends to be some of the problem when you get into places like Odyssey and Rumble and BitChute and Gab and Minds, is that they are so political that they can't really draw anybody else in. One of the props to Rumble, and I'm quite impressed by the fact that a lo-fi channel did this, is the lo-fi girl that streams on YouTube, the girl that's been studying for a test for 12 and a half years, is on Rumble as well. They're actually making an attempt to have gaming content, music content, and real slice of life stuff, like YouTube used to be. How-to videos, product endorsements, lore, Trek lore, things like that. And it is going to be a partisan side of it, and I don't understand that. Steve Shives, the communist that loves Star Trek and Star Trek videos, is never going to go to Rumble. Orange River, I hope that he goes to Rumble. In fact, I'll be talking a little bit more about Orange River tomorrow night. The other Star Trek guy, who is also considerably further to the left than us, is never going to go to Rumble because they keep hearing how partisan it is, how it's all right-wing and it's all political commentary. But it's not, and I like that. I like being a part of the new community, again, even though I'm a year late to the party. All my uploads have been uploaded to Rumble, though, since, I was probably 3 weeks into Rumble launching, where I'd actually signed up for it and set them to take all my YouTube uploads, and they automatically upload all my YouTube videos to my Rumble channel. So if my channel ever does get nuked on YouTube, there is an archive forever on Rumble, which I like. I like that a lot. And they took everything too, by the way, all the way back from my first video on the Parkland shooting. I've gone through my library over on that side and found it, and it goes all the way back, and I'm very impressed and thankful for that. But I'm also thankful to be on a platform that has growth, that has people coming in and joining, and new people, and actually reaching out to new people. So I'm thankful for that, and I'm also thankful for kind of grabbing the bull by the balls and actually pulling the trigger back into my... So a lot of you guys know that I did keto for a long time when I lived back on the other side of the state, around the Janesville area. I didn't live in Janesville, but I lived in one of the small towns around it. And then when I decided to get my new job and move, part of it was because I was spending so much time driving back and forth across the state. And part of it was for the fact that I wanted to finish up some of the stuff in my cabinets and really make my meals quicker and easier. But I'd started eating carbs again during the week. I eat normally on the weekend still because otherwise my metabolism just completely crashes. So I got over here, and when I got my first paycheck and started to be able to buy food again, because I had to go 3 weeks without a paycheck when I moved, I decided to go back, or attempted to go back down into keto. I was having some other problems with it. Starving all the time, still craving during the week, and I still do, by the way. And at 2 weeks in, I broke. And I tried to do a portion control diet, and it just wasn't doing anything for me. I was still gaining weight back again like crazy. I'm on my 3rd week of it at this point. 3 weeks ago, I went back and grabbed the bull by the balls. I think 4 weeks. Yeah, I'm on my 4th week now, I guess. Whereas again, at dinner time on Friday, I break my carb fast, and I go back and I have a fish fry. And then I eat normally until dinner time on Sunday. But I'm actually starting to get noticeable results, which I didn't get the first time. My pants are starting to fall off my ass. So I'm thankful for that. And again, come Friday, after we get done with Contemporary, I'll turn off my microphone, pull off my headphones, and we'll go raid somebody on Twitch. And then I will go back and put on a pair of normal pants, not my work pants, and go over to a local bar with a great fish fry and have 3 pieces of fish and a bunch of french fries. And do that until Sunday, which is my birthday, by the way. Even though I don't celebrate, I don't want to see happy birthdays on Friday. I don't celebrate. But I'll be going and doing that, and, again, we'll start to see a definite change here. I feel fantastic at this point, too, by the way. A little bit sick because I had a little bit of, let's just say a bunch of viruses took up residence in the back of my sinuses. And they've been whipping my ass for the last couple days, but other than that, I feel fantastic about it. So the energy's coming up, and after that 2nd week, I can stick with it. I almost broke so many times during that 1st week and the 2nd week, but it's getting to the point that it's easy and my body knows what to do. So there's that aspect of it too. So I'm thankful for that, and getting the willpower back to make an improvement in my life. And with that, we're out of here. Where's the outro music? There it is. So, with that, we're done. We're out of here. Thanks everybody who came by and chatted in the live chat over on the main channels. I would like to see some more people go and check out the Odyssey and the Rumble. I do understand the fact that these chats don't get married to everything else, so you guys don't get to see what the Twitch and the YouTube guys are doing, but I try to read through it all through the streams, so hopefully you guys can come back and find a way to converse with each other. But I'm out of here tonight. Join the Rumble channel, by the way. It's a lot of fun. And again, you're helping to grow a bigger and better community than YouTube could ever be. So come back and join over there. Again, I'm very glad I got that running. We'll be back here tomorrow with more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. I've got some articles on for things that I like and things that I hate. I'm definitely looking forward to doing some of that, including what I'm watching on TV right now. So it'll be a little bit of a shock because given what the subject matter of the show is, it doesn't seem like something that a guy would watch, but I can relate to the main character into the fact of losing almost absolutely everything in circumstances beyond one's control. So I'm kind of happy to share that with you. And even if you guys don't wind up liking it, I kind of want to explain why I like it and make the defense of it. But we'll talk about that tomorrow afternoon and evening over here on Contemporary. Looking forward to more of that. Looking forward to seeing you guys here and more live chat then. And we will be here then. And until then, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.